When you think of a person only through the eyes of them being a resource, then slavery becomes a justifiable thought.
I represent for the West Coast, uptown and back down, and everybody scattered with improper grammar. I represent for the West Coast, uptown and back down, and everybody scattered with improper grammar. Kick back the big track, I flip stacks and double. I mix scraps to get racks, or big sacks to fumble.
Hey, what's up, man? This is part 2 of, and the final part of our prologue section. And so it's going to be separated in 2 ways. I'm going to be talking about 2 things that I'm going to expand further from the part 1 that we just had last week. And the 2 things, happily so, are 2 things that people who were watching the video gave me some feedback and had questions about. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about in part 2. And so this is what it's going to be. We're going to talk about why I call this sacred, and we're going to talk about community or dynamics of community. And so the first thing is, let's figure out what I said. What did I say for someone to ask me, why do I call it sacred, and what am I talking about? So here's a video of me saying that this is sacred. Run it. This didn't start, me looking for a solution didn't start because I wanted economic reward. Although I'm gonna try to make some money. I ain't stupid, but not everything needs to be capitalized. Some things can be sacred. Some things can be sacred. Even with anyway, that's gonna be another video. All right, so why do I call this sacred? I'm like, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? What do I mean by calling it sacred? Am I saying that we should revere this and worship this? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not talking about the image at all. It actually represents something, right? And although I'm not talking about it in a religious sense, I'm talking about it in a sense of this is something that's unique unto itself. And it's not about the image, it's really about what it represents. Now, while we didn't come to any conclusion in part 1 about what this is, let me just say, so it talks about our behavior, the things that govern our behavior. And so what it represents is what I'm calling sacred. I'm calling human behavior sacred. Why am I doing that? I'm not saying that we should venerate or worship human behavior. That's not what I'm saying, but I am saying that human behavior is sacred, meaning unto itself. It's separate unto itself. There's nothing on earth in terms of animal behavior like human behavior. And although we do in some ways worship human behavior, right? We venerate it when someone has taken their behavior and honed it into some skill set, especially when it's a unique skill set. We tend to, in different ways, venerate or worship people who are able to take their behavior and hone it into a skill set. But that's not what I'm calling sacred. But human beings as itself, like human behavior, is sacred. Because just think about it. Human behavior has an ability to change the absolute structure of the earth and the atmosphere, more so than any other animal. We are set apart unto ourselves in that way. And so it's sacred in that sense. In fact, when we're building our nations, we build our nations by human behavior, right? And this is a reductionist way of looking at it, but it's human behavior that builds nations. It's our interpretation of human behavior that causes wars and the reason we fight. We know when we want to build nations or we want to get people to do so, it's human behavior that's actually governing this. We see, and leaders of nations see the importance of human behavior. And so we know that it's set apart unto itself to be something that's unique. And that's not the only reason I call it sacred, but even if you look at our myths, right? Like our myths and religious thoughts. And of course, I use 2 separate things because I do have a bias. I do believe in the supernatural. And so our myths What do you think those stories are about, right? The moral of the story, it's about human behavior. Even our myths are, and our great stories are just surrounded around human behavior. And think about our religious beliefs. And this is for any of the religious organizations that are out there, right? They have this God. And what is it that God is focused on, or his whole thought structure is focused on? It's human behavior. And so I'm saying human behavior, even from people who believe in the supernatural and believe that there's a God, and to those who don't, who are more secularist or humanist, right? We know that human behavior is sacred unto itself. And so that's what I mean. That's what I mean. So when I say that it doesn't have to be capitalized first, it can be sacred. What I'm saying is the understanding that I want to have push forward first is the idea that humanity is a sacred being. We're sacred before we are able to do any type of things or become resources for any other thing. And when we think of someone only through the eyes of capital or through the eyes of just being some sort of resource, then slavery becomes a justifiable thought. Let me say that again. When you think of a person only through the eyes of them being a resource, then slavery becomes a justifiable thought. Let me say that again. I would say, when we look at someone only through the eyes of them being a resource or just looking at them as capital, then slavery, and that slavery can extend to someone who has this entitled feeling that somebody else has to submit to them. That idea becomes a justifiable thought when that person is just something to be moved. Modern example of something like that, look at what just happened with Naomi Osaka, right? Like, she wanted to just not talk to reporters because right now I'm dealing with some emotional thing, but because she's only looked at as a resource, who are you? You just have a skill set, just do the skill. When you don't look at her as sacred, when you don't look at her as a person first, then of course the entitlement that you ought to submit becomes a justifiable thought. Now, I know that what I'm saying is a broad statement, and then there are nuances when you take these abstract thoughts and try to bring them into some sort of practical way. And granted, there are nuances, and I'm happy to have those conversations. You could put the comment below, but when you think of someone as a resource, slavery becomes a justifiable thought. As a matter of fact, that idea you can see right now in evangelical circles where they're having conversations about men and women. When you think of a person as a resource, the entitled feeling for somebody to submit becomes a justifiable. Let me leave that alone. Leave that alone. So when I say sacred, I don't mean this. I don't mean, oh, you need to worship the core four sequence is what it represents, is what I'm saying. Humanity is sacred. Okay. The second thing that I wanted to kind of like talk about it as well, like given that this is about developing behavior, self-control, those type of ideas. Oftentimes Christians would ask me, okay, so are you saying that all you got to do is have self-control and that's how you can get your salvation? No. The salvation that you talk about in the gospel, or the gospel speaks about, is not what I'm saying. That's not what this is. I'm just saying that people need to learn how to behave. Self-control has nothing to do with the salvation that the gospel speaks about. Okay, cool. The other thing that I'm trying to expand further, and then we can just end this, we're going to talk about community. What do I mean when I say community, and how does it tie into what we're talking about with this sacredness of a person, or sacredness of human behavior? I was taught that community is both, one, the purpose of gathering, is the purpose of gathering, and two, the oneness or the unity of those that are gathered. This is both. Community is both that. It's one, the purpose for why we're here together, and it's two, the oneness of the people who are actually there. So the purpose. When we think about community and community development, we talk about ways to increase living. That we're trying to increase our way of living. So we talk about, imagine having a community, and we want to have a fire department. Of course, this is modern examples. We don't have a fire department, we don't have a police department, and we actually want to have a place that actually helps develop employable skills. So we have schools or maybe apprenticeships or whatever. Someone's going to teach you some sort of skill that you could be employed. The thing that drives this way of living is, of course, business. And so business needs marketing to be able to have this flow of money within the community. And so the purpose of community is to increase the way of living. And so anything that's going to help get these things going is where we are. And oftentimes, at least with some people that I speak with, that's where we talk about when we talk about community development. But you take this marketing idea and you see it from a global scale or even from a national scale, and you recognize this unforeseen result or outcome where it begins to build a consumeristic mindset. You're very consumer driven. And of course, there's some instinct there where we definitely have the instinct to consume. But it's this idea of gimme, I need. It triggers this greed instinct, right? Like this, I want. And that's where we are, I feel. Now, this is, of course, my opinion. And I feel like that mindset is the mindset that had sparked or provoked or pushed the guy who shot my uncle, shot my father, those things. That's the mindset that kind of pushed it. And it's because we only have this one part of community that we think about, but not the other. I remember looking at some of Tim Kasser, Dr. Tim Kasser. Kasser is Kasser. And you look at some of his work, and I tell you kind of like a blurb of what I think his work like represents. He says, the desire of greed activates surrounding values that help that pursuit. But then it also chokes out at the same time desires of generosity and its surrounding values that help pursue pro-social ends. That's his work. When you read it, that's the feel of what he shares. That the desire of greed activates all the values that surround it, and that's going to help it get what it wants. But while you're going after that, what it actually begins to choke out is the pro-social values that would help you be generous. Be generous. And I'm not saying that one doesn't, this is not an either or type of commentary. I'm saying both. And how do we do it? I don't know. I'm just sharing what I feel and what I see. So that's part one of community. If I'm talking about community dynamics, community is one, the purpose of the gathering, and I'm saying that it's for increasing a way of living, and all these institutions that surround it to help you get that. So whenever we want to help with anything, say like violence in our community, we use these outside institutions to try to help guide behavior. And partly because I think we intuitively believe that in behaviorism, we believe that external environments governs one's behavior. And in some degree, that's absolutely correct. So that's one. The second part of community, like I said, I think it's both and, is the oneness or the unity of those people who are actually gathered. The difficulty in our nation at this time, the oneness of a group is probably impossible. because we live in a pluralistic society. But I think just knowing this is an important part, and people need to know that it's an integral part of what community is. And here's how I see the oneness of the group. I've worked around some athletic environments, right? And there's a distinct difference between a group and a team, right? You could have people on the same squad, come to the same practices, wear the same, they got the name on the jerseys, play the same games, fill a particular role, and that's not a team. A team is something distinct, something different. You could have a group of people, and so that's why I was taught that community has both, not just the purpose of the gathering, but the oneness of the people that's gathered. And because you could have the resources, you could have the roles. Okay, I'm gonna be this, you be this, you be this, you be this, and you could help them develop that, but it's still not a team yet, still not together. And there are many ways that we could talk about what this oneness is. And what I'm going to use is a principle that I call the 99-1 principle. You ever heard of the 80-20 principle, where they say like 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people? Or maybe you hear the Tyler Perry joint where he says, you're in a relationship and you have a lady who gives you 80%, but she don't give you the 20%. And so you're looking for the lady with the 20% because you're missing it. And then you go and you leave the 80 for the 20. And then you realize I only got a 20 piece. Well, this is along the lines. This is a 99-1 principle. Here's what I think it is. It's if you have 100 people and one person leaves, if you have a consumerist mindset, if you see people only as resources, what you're gonna say is, well, leave then. I don't need you. I got 99 left. We can still get stuff done. That's what someone who looks at people as resources would do, because somebody is going to fill the role. But that's because you only see community and you only see humanity as resources. What do you think the 99 who's left is going to fill? I guess it depends who's the one who's leaving, huh? But what do you think they're going to feel? Man, this person doesn't care about me. But what happens if when that 91, and this comes from, of course, scripture, but what happens when the one leaves and then the leader goes after that one? What does that say? And I guess it depends on who that one is, but let's just we're in the abstract, right? Like, he goes after that one. What does it say to the 99 that's left? We are more than a group. I know that if he goes after that individual, that if I stray, that leader will come after me. And so community, while people love groups, it's really about the one. If you're able to understand its connection between the one, not the group, but it's one-on-one connections all the way through. You may not be able to connect with everybody in a deep way, but they know that they are actually cared for. They know that they are actually sacred to you. They know that you literally care about them. That's community. That's community. It's deeper. And I know it's hard to see within this social media world where everyone wants to have numbers. I want to have a whole bunch of people following me. And because we think about the group, we kind of overlook the one. And I was always taught, like, it's the one. It's not the whole bunch, but it's the one. And it's that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. And the power is in allowing the one to understand that as well, to know that it's about that one and that one. And so community really boils down to, and this is, of course, a reductionist perspective, it boils down to the one. Are you able to connect to that one? And what does that one mean? And that is the reason why I say, again, this is sacred. Not the core four sequence, not the image, the idea of human behavior is sacred. And that's along the idea of what scriptures or the Bible talks about when it says Imago Dei. Humans are sacred. They're unto themselves. Their behavior is unique more than any other animal that's out here. And yes, we are sacred. And community is a little bit more than just thinking about resources or filling up someone to be able to be helpful for the resources to flow so that the flow of money can happen and people could have a way of living, right? But it's also understanding that people are sacred, and we don't overlook them because we got more here. You can go because I don't care. I don't care about you. We still got more to do. That's a difficult thing to do. And I know that there are nuances to the conversation. I know that, again, this is like a topical understanding of it, is an abstract understanding that when you try to bring that into some sort of practicality, it kind of meshes out. So just think of this abstract thought for really just shaping one's heart's posture towards the one more than actually trying to create a methodology or a principle of living that's going to always be that thing. Because maybe sometimes in certain instances, you can't go after that one, but that's not the case. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the heart posture of understanding that the person that's in front of you, that one person matters. That one person is sacred. And so that's where I want to end this. And I want to end by actually reading something that kind of captures what I think I've said here. And I'm going to put it up. Our desires are often shaped by storylines that are affirmed by culture and operate like ceremonial rites of passage for belonging. Let me read it again. Our desires are often shaped by storylines that are affirmed by culture and operate like ceremonial rites of passage for belonging. How do we go about helping ourselves to see each other as sacred? How do we go about helping ourselves see ourselves and each other as sacred? That question, I think, is the question that I will answer or try to answer, right? In chapter 1, I think I'm liking this book thing idea, whatever it is I called it, whatever. But in the next video, how do we go about helping ourselves see ourselves and other people as sacred? What does that look like? And can it be more practical than abstract? I don't know. I'd love to have the conversation go. If you have something to say about it, please leave a comment below. And if you like what you're hearing so far, please subscribe, like. And I also want to say, like I said in the first one, this is not going to last forever. I'm going to stop this. At least I think so. Unless somebody says something different, like, no, continue on. Or maybe I get people to come on and we could have conversations, maybe have a Zoom chat and have conversations with others. Maybe that it could turn into that. But as far as I'm concerned, I think I have a beginning and an end. And so thank you very much for sharing your time with me. I expanded on why I call it sacred and what I think community is. And chapter 1, the title of that is The Space in Between. Look out for that one next week.
West Coast,
All right, man.
Back down and everybody scattered with improper grammar.
Virgin Islands.
I represent for the West Coast, uptown and back down and everybody scattered with improper grammar. Kick back the big track, I flip stacks and double. I mix crafts to get racks, or big sacks to fumble. I whip rap to get that, no lip smack, I'm humble. I hit that's like 6 packs, that's big facts to rumble. Stumble off the block, tell it.